Hello?
Hello.
Hey, man.
What's up? All right, hit me up, Yang Ganger. How do I get over my dislike for the man?
So I absolutely understand
You might
that.
want to mute my stream.
Yeah, sorry, I just did that. I absolutely understand that Yang is not perfect in his messaging at all the times, and he's not a politician, and he doesn't have that veneer. But he does have the heart in it, and his actual methods of going out and reaching across the aisle has definitely brought more people that I've seen than like me trying to logic people into it. I've seen through his logic, I've been able to talk to like conservative family members and friends, and
What end
actually
though? Like
convince them that they're convince them. Okay, so it's been about inequality. So the fact that we do need to redistribute wealth, and we live in an unprecedented time of wealth in America, in the world, technically, and that we can use that to our advantage as a country to bring people out of poverty. And most conservatives will just shut you down at any type of redistribution. But talking about how we live in an unprecedented time, like Yang did, was absolutely one of the things that turned some of my friends into a little bit less skeptical.
The thing that I guess I don't get is that that's talked about by like basically every single Democratic presidential candidate since 2016, you know? Like Bernie Sanders talked about that. And honest to God, so does Biden. Like Biden talks about it as well. Like he's trying to push forward the $3.5 trillion reconciliation bill, which has in it provisions which will do, a significant amount of good when it comes to reducing, poverty in this country.
Absolutely. And we can't let obstructionists get in the way of that. There are Democratic obstructionists that are doing that, and you're one of the first people to say that we need to call them out on that. But the fact of the matter is that we can't do that without acknowledging that we need that to happen. So there are even some people on the left that are kind of trepidatious about a UBI, and I mean, we can't just exclude people from the circle. We need to have the tough conversations. And honestly, it's terrible to say this, but when you have those tough conversations, I've had, people will say racist things to your face. You know this directly. And I mean, it does take some swallowing of, what you want to say so that you can get the real point across at the end. And I think that was a weak interview with Yang on Tucker Carlson, but I think that he was able to educate some people about wealth inequality.
It just seems like the only thing that he gets across is the fact that we need some kind of wealth redistribution, which you can get from any like Democrat-leaning character, but he does it while enabling every single like dumb fuck centrist talking point when it comes to both sides, you know? Like if your message is we need wealth inequality and the best way to do that is with a non-political centrist party moving forward, I don't really have much respect for that because you're essentially baiting people with one bit of true information into a completely like useless and asinine and directionless set of political policies, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And if we were to think of that forward party as being completely centrist, then that's absolutely correct. But taking a deeper look at the policies, I find that it's a more nuanced balance between some of the conservative policies that I mean, I don't know, I have a harder time getting against, like higher taxes on small businesses and different things like that. But there are things that I think that are very important to leftists, like the universal basic income and expanding welfare.
Yeah, well, I'm looking at the Forward Party right now, and I'm seeing like
I will honestly say I haven't been able to do a ton of research on the Forward Party specifically. I've been a member of like following his party since the political campaign in 2020, and the NYC mayor campaign was a disappointment to say the least. But I do believe that in America we can benefit from having more than two voices of political parties, and you yourself said that.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. The issue is that again, like the veneer of this being like an apolitical thing is really, really strange to me. When it's there's no such thing as an apolitical political policy. It's pretty much kind of wrapped in by default, you know? I'm looking at like the platform stuff for the Forward Party, and a lot of it seems like he's really unwilling to touch on any issue that anyone really cares about, because if he does, he'll have to make a political statement, you know? We have like accessible and secure voting, civic juries, American exchange program, democracy dollars, what? Automatic tax filing, Department of Technology, citizens
The
portals.
democracy dollars is so that every citizen has money that they can donate to political candidates of their choice, so that we have more support, that political candidates don't need to have PACs. They
It,
can actually get their money from the citizens.
I think that's defensible. It's just, don't you think it's a little weird that Andrew Yang has characterized the Democratic Party as being out of touch and unconcerned with issues that really affect citizens, but then he goes ahead
No.
and starts a platform that's exclusively dedicated to issues that nobody gives a fuck about?
No, I feel like these issues are things that we do care about. Ranked choice voting and
The
fixing our
average
voting
American, if
system.
you asked them about ranked choice voting, would look at you with a glassy-eyed stare.
You're right. And the average American would also look at me with a glass-eyed stare if I brought up UBI. Even my like
Yes,
leftist people in my church would look at me like, why? And I mean, that doesn't mean that they're not points and they're not policies that are strong and that we can actually benefit from.
yeah, it's just like, again, it's like there are huge gaps in what this is referring to, because he's specifically avoiding any issues that have a strong partisan divide. But you can't rule, you can't be in government without without weighing in on those issues. Like, there's nothing here about raising taxes or about meaningful welfare, and the reason for that is because if he did express any opinion on that, he would have to give up this like centrist, like, aesthetic. You know what I mean?
Possibly, but I think that that's kind of taking his argument and reading into it in the most negative way, because I think that he is really trying to make like more people will actually understand these policies if they let their guard down and have a conversation with someone. And he's saying that in the rural areas of this country, if you say that you're a Democrat, people won't even talk to you. And that's absolutely true. I live in Tennessee, and I mean, that is exactly the case. I have to hide my beliefs about 50% of the time. And sometimes when I don't, I thinking that I'm in a circle of people that I can trust, I unconsciously rub someone the wrong way and they leave immediately. And I mean, that's it. There's a balance that, I mean, even with Tucker Carlson, that fucker, he was there to talk with him and actually maybe send a message to those viewers, and that there's not just left and right. We can come together.
But there is
And
just left and right.
yes, that's true. But if we come together around an idea of our fiscal policy being about giving back to the Americans, I think that that could be a right and a left point at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it seems like first of all, Republicans will never get behind it because it would involve like raising taxes. The thing is that like all it seems like Andrew Yang is basically just providing cover to Tucker Carlson, who will LARP as a populist, but in reality will never ever support any policy that hurts American billionaires. So by Yang going on there and pushing for these ideas, but not actually like challenging Tucker Carlson on them, they didn't talk about the VAT tax that much, but he should have hammed in on
No,
that. Like, if we want these things, we will need to raise taxes on the wealthy. It
I
like
think he's laying off of that because he's not a political campaign person now. He's trying to play more of a person that
he's
is a
advocating for
media
a political
entertainer.
party. I mean, he's a political candidate who's advocating for a political party that he's starting. I mean, isn't that
Yeah, and he's also trying to like market that party as something that can be approached from the left or the right.
well? But what I'm saying is the only way you can do that is by making the party like meaningless. It seems like the only thing he's really going to serve to do right now is to pull people from the left to the Republicans by running as a Democrat, getting Democrat followers, bombing, becoming an independent, and then going on shows like Tucker Carlson and talking with him as though they agree on anything, which Tucker Carlson doesn't. The issues that they agree on, like, what was it, H-1B visas? Tucker Carlson
Yeah.
doesn't like immigrants, so he was lying about that. If
But him putting that lying about that viewpoint on his viewership is technically a win from Yang's side, because his millions of viewers are now getting a belief that, hey, maybe H1V visas are actually something that I can support.
No, you need to remember the alt-right days, dude. It was like when they brought Richard Spencer on and they were like, "You're not a white supremacist, right?" And Richard Spencer was like, "No, I'm not a white supremacist." You're not getting a win by like getting a Nazi to say they're not a white supremacist. They're not backing off anything. Their audience either doesn't care or knows that they're lying. When it comes to Tucker Carlson's audience, I would say they don't care because they've been politically annulled to any kind of consistency. Tucker Carlson lies and backtracks all the time. So in his case, all you're really doing is adding ammunition to the pile that people will use to describe him as an economic populist, when in reality, he's very much not, and Yang, by providing no pushback to Tucker Carlson's characterization of the Democrats, did nothing but present a proportionally positive view of the Republican Party.
Well, I will say that because he's on Republican, they were definitely not going to say anything bad about Republicans. But
Why not?
The thing is that he's starting this political party, and he went on to Tucker Carlson, the furthest right, basically, of the entertainers on there, and he's trying to make it so that he's not someone who is going to like piss you off and cause a controversy on your thing. He wants to bring people together.
But
he's not.
That's the lie about pushing people together. You can't do politics without alienating people. At the end of the day, a good portion of this country fucking sucks, and the only way to make this country better is to make sure their wishes don't get enacted at a federal or state level. You can't do anything political without acknowledging it.
That's really cynical, especially for someone who's like so debate oriented. But I guess I haven't been in that mindset. I've had conversations with people that I've been able to bring them further to the left, and it has been through.
I'm not saying you can't bring them further to the left. I'm saying that as long as they're not on the left, they should have no political power. That would make the country better. I don't want transphobes having control over like gender policy in the US, or racists having control over housing policy, civic planning, or anything having anything to do with reparations. These people
Yang
have
is not neither
ideas.
of those things. And when Tucker Carlson brought up the transphobe thing, he actually low key was just like, he shut that down and completely changed the topic. He said that the Forward Party, whenever we come out with all of our policies, it will be that the majority of Americans can agree with. And I think that that's a trans argument. I think that the majority of Americans do support trans rights.
No, he wasn't talking about trans Americans. Just Tucker Carlson brought up trans people being crazy out of nowhere, and Yang just ignored it and talked about like Americans generally supporting the things he advocates for. It had nothing to do. He just let it slide.
He was talking about the policies of his party, though, and from there,
does he have
Yang
trans
said
people mentioned anywhere in his policies?
Not yet, and I think that could be something that he needs to expand on.
The Forward Party never will, because that would be partisan. You can't weigh on that issue without demarking some kind of opposition.
Humanity, like first, and human-centered capitalism would be about lifting the quality of life.
Slave owners call themselves humanists. You can find readings from them. You need a specific saying like human-centered capitalism is what like neoliberals said when they set up sweatshops in Bangladesh. That's not enough.
There are specific, like actually taking, instead of using the GDP as the main level of the economy, factoring in quality of life, factoring in mental health, factoring in the use of like substances and addiction.
Tucker Carlson would say that the best way to improve the mental health of trans people is to get them conversion therapy, so they no longer have the delusion of gender dysphoria.
And that's not what the Forward Party would stand for.
The Forward Party will never weigh in on this issue, because to do so would take away from the impression they're giving that it's possible to govern politically neutrally.
But like, I think that the people, the independent and the libertarian type people, they're more for personal freedom, and personal freedom is trans rights. I think that educating them towards that.
Libertarians recently, I can tell you that they are not consistent in their support for trans rights. Nothing
You're
but
right.
a specific advocacy for trans people will be read as advocacy for trans people. That's why Democrats have it on their websites. You can see it right there. They're open and bold about it. Don't you think it's a little bit odd that you're saying we should have to infer Yang's political positions? Like, don't you think it's a bit odd that the way this is structured means you're playing defense for him being deliberately ambiguous about the things he's advocating for?
It is, it's definitely not something that I feel entirely comfortable doing because I mean, I'm definitely just weighing in on a man's conscience, but I have seen enough and I have been following him for a long enough period that I do trust that what he's doing is in good faith and that he is just trying to make the situation better.
Well, I don't
I
really
mean,
care what he personally believes. I care about what he's going to structure his party around. And so far, nothing in his party is meaningfully socially progressive, or even really economically progressive, I guess. His original UBI wasn't really economically progressive because it discounted UBI payments from welfare expenditures already accrued. So, I mean, that doesn't really
but he
help the
also
cause
changed that. We talked about that.
after
That was
pushback.
originally. It was pushback, but I mean that is actually better. I would rather have a politician who is knowledgeable of the fact that he doesn't know everything and he takes advice from other people. That's good.
I mean, the purpose of welfare is to help people when they can't help themselves. And if your first instinct is to draft a kind of welfare that specifically avoids giving a single penny to the most desperate people in society already, I don't know if them reneging on that after public backlash is like very encouraging, at least from my perspective, you know?
Yeah, and I mean after that they completely changed how they talked about it because they realized that they were appealing more to a democratic audience and that they needed to lean more into the welfare aspect of it. But before that, they weren't sure if it was going to appeal to a Republican or a Democrat, and that's why they named it the Freedom Dividend. And they were marketing this to be able to be something that could be supported from both sides. And so when it was actually became apparent that it was mostly supported from Democrats, they leaned into that messaging and they made it so that it's a base floor actually from his policies, that would just be a beginning of welfare and it could
Don't you
open the door.
don't you think structuring your policies around who gives you the most support in the public venue is a little bit like odd? Like
It's not that he structured the policy technically, it was how they said it to the people.
so I'm not against calling it the freedom dividend or anything. I think that kind of like phony patriotism is really good at playing towards independence. I don't have a problem with that. What I do have an issue with, though, is this feeling I have that Yang is never willing to take a position if he feels like it would cost him, honestly, support from Republicans.
He took
Because
that position about okay, you're right, never mind, I was going to say the homeless people that was so
yeah, no,
inflammatory, but
I think he's actually willing to drop support from Democrats at this point. But from Republicans, it feels like he's not really willing to. Like he sat there and listened to some these screeds from Tucker Carlson on the nature of the Democratic Party and just I mean, he didn't address it at all. I'm not
I
expecting him to debate
he,
Tucker Carlson. It's just
those
like he could have at least offered like a milk toast pushback
But
on it.
some of those things, though, he agrees with. I mean, the fact of the
That
matter
the
is that
Democratic Party is like
Congress
cosmopolitan,
has been
white, childless, liberal, like
not
gay
that,
people.
not that. The fact that they're not getting shit done.
Why
We
aren't
haven't
they?
got shit done because of Republican obstructionism. You're right,
Right.
but that's
So
still,
yeah.
but
So
that's, but
when
the rural
Tucker's like
people don't understand that. The rural people don't understand that. All they're saying is we don't. The Democrats aren't getting shit
then
done.
tell them. Then tell them the reason why Democrats can't get this big 3.5 trillion bill done isn't because of the two moderate Democrats in their midst. It's because of the 50 Republicans. That's the main reason why. We hyperfixate on our own moderates because the Republicans are utterly unwilling to care about the American people. If he wanted to actually go not left, not right, but forward, that means pulling people from the right too. And that means challenging some of these ideas on Tucker Carlson's platform.
You're right, and I would hope that as time goes on, he would become more comfortable with challenging him on his own platform, and he can hopefully do that for the left too, because he also does have. I mean, he has done that on CNN. There's no reason why he shouldn't do that on Tucker Carlson.
Well, I
But
guess, but he went on Tucker Carlson, and I mean, he didn't. So, is he going
I
to go
know.
on a second time?
I mean, I'm sure. I think that he's trying to keep his lines open with both of the parties, and he's trying to. I mean, it's also money, of course, but he's trying to keep the door open. He doesn't want to shut the door.
It's important to me that I know that Yang has moved people over to the left. I won't pretend that he hasn't. It's important to me that they get moved over to the right left because the wrong left to me would be this kind of politically neutral, centrist.
Neoliberal.
Yeah, where it's like, okay, well, here's the solution. We need to tech bro it up. Okay, we need more technocracy. We need to
The
fix our.
tech bro, that's a misconception. Like the media
Uh,
labeled him as that, and that's he never did like a technology thing. He was more of like a person. He reallocated people after they were graduated. Instead of going to New York or LA, he told them to go to smaller cities and start startups.
well,
That's what
it's not actually about him liking technology. It's the attitude he has. Or
okay.
Elon Musk will get a ton of publicity and like
We can
fanfare.
fix it with business.
Well, yeah, we can reinvent the wheel. Well, I will take this solution and I will change it with my giant mind. I will break the paradigm. And that's kind of what Elon Musk does with all of his stupid bullshit. And it's what Yang does too with this, like, not left, not right, but forward. Because what you're
He,
advocating for in this convo is exclusively left leaning solutions. And you're telling me the only reason he does the not left, not right, but forward thing is as a bait to try to keep Republicans from getting scared off by it. And if you're willing to admit to me that this is some kind of like honeypot that he's building up and that eventually he'll pull off the cloak and this will be like a progressive left-leaning like advocacy group marketing itself as a centrist group, then I guess I'm on board with that if it actually happens, but you can only go so many years talking about like, how much farther it is down the road that'll happen before I get suspicious.
Oh, absolutely. And I would be hesitant to say that completely. In my mind, knowing Yang, that is completely what I am thinking that he is doing. I mean, the policies that he enacted were absolutely progressive that he had on his for his campaign. Universal health care and UBI, those are all things that are expanding the welfare state and giving us more support, and that's what he stands for. And I think that he also is against overregulation and bureaucracy. So that's something that the right likes in him. So he does. That's why he stood for a universal basic income. He doesn't want there to be means testing because it just costs more money to do that.
I just think the
So
main reason the right likes him is because he doesn't really say left-leaning stuff that much, and if he did start saying left-leaning stuff, which he would need to be politically useful to me, I guess,
yeah,
they would stop liking him. So it seems like a grift you can only keep up for so long, I think.
and I think that's true too. And I if the grift were to be exposed, I definitely wouldn't still support the man. But I've followed him for long enough that I have to trust that this is something that he's doing for the right reasons. And
Okay.
I follow you for I think that you do what you do for the right reasons. And I mean, but yeah.
All right. Well, I can't say I agree with you, but you came on here in superbly good faith, and I don't know. I guess we'll see how things play out in the future.
Absolutely.
And I'll try to be respectful, and if Yang does anything that I think corresponds
Hey,
to a a good strategy for bringing people over to the left, then I'll try to pay attention to that too, and not just get the dunks. I appreciate you coming on.
hey, I appreciate you having me. I used to listen to Yang every day, and now I listen to you every day. My friend Matt C put me on to you, and I appreciate everything that you do for the community.
Thank you very much, and I'm glad I called. You take care, okay?
All right, you too. Bye.
Peace.